Hola y bienvenidos a este video donde vamos a mirar el modo imperativo en español. Hello and welcome to this video lesson where we're going to take a look at the Spanish imperative mood. Now the imperative mood is what we use to give people commands, requests, permission and also to give people directions. So it's really useful if you want to take our Spanish to the next level. Let's get started. Vamos. Los retos de hoy, los retos de esta clase son mirar el imperativo por la primera vez, entender qué es y cómo funciona, y aprender a utilizarlo. Antes de todo, quiero que encuentres en los objetivos, en los retos, estas frases y palabras. So first of all, I want you to look in those objective bullet points, in the goals for today, and to find the following words and phrases. Una palabra que significa to take a look at or to look at. Una palabra que significa to understand. Dos palabras que significan how it works. Y tres palabras que significan to learn to use it. So pause the video, have a look for those, and when you're ready, push play and we'll go through the answers. To take a look at is mirar. Mirar is to look or to take a look at something. To understand is entender. You might also know the verb comprender, so they're both synonyms. How it works is cómo funciona, and it's essential you remember that accent on the O, because if not, it means like or as. To learn how to use it or to learn to use it is aprender a utilizarlo. So it's almost like to learn to utilize it. Entonces empezamos con esta pregunta. ¿Qué es el imperativo? So we're going to start off with this question. What is the imperative? The imperative is a mood in Spanish that is frequently used in both Spanish and in English to give commands, which in Spanish are mandatos, but also to give permission and directions. So in English to say, open the door, that's the imperative. You're giving a command. Giving permission is like, go ahead. You're giving someone permission. You're kind of giving them a command, but you're giving them permission. And also directions. If you just say to someone, take the next left, you're kind of giving them a command again. So they're all different forms of giving orders or giving commands. It can be broken down into two different forms. Positive, what are also called affirmative imperatives, so things like go to the party, you're telling someone to do something. And negative imperatives like don't go to the party, so you're telling someone not to do something. Today we're just going to focus on the positive ones. Continuing to look at this question, ¿qué es el imperativo? We're going to have a look at some more details to help us understand this. The Spanish imperative exists for 5 different grammatical persons. So it's got different forms for the tú form, the usted form, nosotros, vosotros, and ustedes. So 5 different forms. Depending on who you're speaking to, you'll need to use 5 different forms of the imperative in Spanish. So for each of these different people, you're going to use a slightly different conjugation, a slightly different form of the verb. Entonces ya hemos hecho el primer reto. We've already finished the first objective, to learn what the imperative mood is. So let's give that one a tick. And our next step is to learn how to use it. ¿Cómo se usa el imperativo con el tú? So first off, we'll look at how to use the imperative when we're speaking to someone in the tú form. So for the tú form of the imperative, it's exactly the same as the third person singular form of the regular present tense. So the same form of the verb you'd use for él, ella, ella, the non-binary form, and usted. So that means verbs ending in AR are going to end in A. So we'd say to someone, habla, speak. So the same as él habla, ella habla, he speaks, she speaks. If you're speaking to a singular person using tú, you can say to them, habla, speak, háblame, speak to me. For verbs ending in ER or IR, you're going to use the E ending. So to tell someone to run, you could say, corre. To tell someone decide, you could say, decide. So it's exactly the same as él corre, ella decide. So it's nice and easy with the tú form. And this is great news because the tú form is probably the form that you're going to use the most. Ahora vamos a practicar. Ahora practiquemos. So now let's practice. That's in itself an imperative to say practiquemos, let's practice. What I'd like you to do is to make these infinitive verbs into imperatives in the to form. So remember, this is exactly the same as conjugating them into the él, ella, usted form. So it's nice and easy. We should be able to do this without any problems. So when you're ready, just pause the video, do the verbs 1 to 7, and then when you push play, we'll go through the answers. Okay, so número 1, escuchar, to listen becomes escucha, listen. And you can pop me on the end to say listen to me, escúchame, all as one word. Termina, for terminar, so to finish becomes termina, finish. And again, you could pop lo on the end to say finish it, termínalo. Escribir becomes escribe, write. Abrir becomes abre, abre la puerta, abre la ventana, open the door, open the window. Vivir becomes vive, so vive tu vida, live your life, that's a command. Comer becomes come, come tu desayuno, eat your breakfast. And mirar becomes mira, mírame, look at me. Mira aquí, look at this, look here. ¿Qué pasa con los verbos reflexivos? What happens with reflexive verbs? Now that's a good question. For reflexive verbs in the tu form, all you have to do is add the te pronoun to the end of the imperative. So for example, tú te levantas, you get up. If we take the verb levantarse, to get up or to get oneself up, what we need to do is take levantar, make it become levanta, and then add the te, and it becomes levántate. Get up, get yourself up, levántate. Sentarse, to sit oneself down, becomes siéntate. Vestirse, to get oneself dressed, becomes vístete. Vístete, get yourself dressed. ¿Cuáles son los irregulares clave? What are the key irregulars? Now there are 7 key verbs that I'm going to show you that are irregular in the to form of the imperative. The first one is poner, to put, that becomes pon. Now, I've been showing you all of the imperatives with exclamation marks. You don't need to use the exclamation marks. That's just me kind of reminding you that these are kind of orders. They're commands that you give to people. But obviously they don't need to be shouted. Tener, to have, becomes ten. Ten paciencia, have patience. Ten fe, have faith. Venir, to come, becomes ven. So to say come here, you can say ven aquí. Come to the party, ven a la fiesta. Hacer, to do, becomes haz, or with a Spanish lisp, haz. And that's how you can say do. So haz tus deberes, do your homework. Ir, to go, becomes ve. Decir, to say, becomes di. Di la verdad, tell the truth, say the truth. Salir, to have, becomes sal, which is also the word, exactly the same spelling for the word salt in Spanish. So there is a terrible dad joke which goes, Mamá, mamá, ¿puedo salir de la casa? And then the mum says, no. So then the kid asks her, Mamá, ¿cómo se llama eso que agregamos a la comida para darle sabor? What do we call that thing that we put on food to give it flavor? And she says, sal. And he says, vale, adios. Okay, so it's a bit of a joke because sal, the word for salt, is also the command go or get out. Vete, to show you some phrases, vete means go away. So it's kind of taking ir, but making it reflexive, irse, so to sort of take oneself away. So vete, go away, vete de aquí, get out of here. Dime, tell me. So dime la verdad, tell me the truth. It's quite common actually for Spanish people to answer the phone by saying, instead of hola, saying dime, kind of like tell me what's up, dime. So you'll probably hear and see that one quite a lot. Okay, now to make sure we've got these down and we're able to recognize them when we see them, we've got a bit of a practice activity. So practica, practice, emparejalos, match them up. So I'm giving you some orders now, giving you some imperatives. So even though we've only seen these really quickly, you should have noticed that most of them have some sort of link with the infinitive, maybe except for the one that matches up with ir. So when you're ready, pause the video, write down 1 to 6 if you've got some paper and a pen handy, and just match these up. And then when you're ready to go through the answers, just push play. Okay, let's go through. So número 1, ir, goes with be. So the letter be is just like the pronunciation of the word be, go. Número 2, tener, goes with ten, a. 3, poner con pon, se. 4, venir con ven, e, or e in English. 5, decir, goes with di, f. Y por último, last of all, número 6, salir, goes with sal, de. ¿Cómo se usa el imperativo con el vosotros? How do we use the imperative with the form vosotros, the you plural form? Now, to give a command to a group of people, which could be your family, friends, or children, using the vosotros form, simply remove the letter R from the infinitive verb and add the letter D. So hablar would go to hablad. And notice it doesn't tend to be pronounced as a hard D like hablad. It's almost like the English TH, hablad. The same as people from Madrid say Madrid instead of Madrid. Comer would go to comed. And abrir goes to abrid. So it's nice and easy, just knock off the R, not the whole ending, just the R, and then add a D. With reflexive verbs, all we need to do is knock off the R and add the os pronoun. So if you want to say, get yourselves up to a group of people, we could say levantaos, and that could mean get out of bed, it could also mean stand up. And even though it's giving a command, you can be polite. You can say, levantaos por favor, get up please. Sentarse becomes sentaos, sentaos por favor, sit down please. And vestirse, to get oneself dressed, becomes vestidos. Vestidos por favor, get dressed please. Ahora vamos a practicar un poco más. Practiquemos, let's practice. Now again, I want you to make these infinitive verbs into imperatives, but this time making them into the vosotros form. So pause the video, and if you've got a piece of paper, write 1 to 7, and then you're just going to write for each one how you'd say listen, finished, or write, and so on in the vosotros form. Okay, let's go through. So escuchar becomes escuchad. Terminar becomes terminad. So we've got listen, finish. Terminad vuestros deberes. Finish your collective homework. Escribir, escribid. Escribid la fecha, write the date. So these are sort of things that Spanish teachers tend to use with the class, because you're speaking to a group of people that you can use vosotros with, you don't need to use ustedes, and you're giving commands. Abrir becomes abrid, like abrid la puerta, open the door. Vivir becomes vivid. Comer, comed. Mirar, mirad. Ahora vamos a mirar cómo usar el imperativo con usted. We're now going to take a look at how we use the imperative with usted, which, if you don't know, is the formal you singular. So if you're speaking to a single person who you need to show respect to, maybe it's a police officer, maybe it's your teacher, maybe it's someone who's older than you, and you don't really know them that well, you're going to use usted. But you still might need to give this person directions, for example. So for the usted form of the imperative, we use something called the subjunctive. Now, you don't need to worry about what that is now. I do have a video on the subjunctive, but it's quite an advanced level of grammar, and you don't really need it if you're not at that stage yet. So we'll just look at how we can use the subjunctive just for this purpose. So basically the endings swap around. That means that verbs ending in AR are going to end in E instead of A. So hablar, instead of becoming habla in the to form, it's going to become hable in the usted form. And then verbs ending in ER and IR, instead of ending in E, they're going to end in A. So it's kind of back to front. It's the wrong way around. So instead of corre, you'd say corra. Instead of decide, decida. So it's quite simple to form the imperatives for the usted form. ¿Cuáles son los irregulares clave? There are quite a few irregulars in the usted form. At least they're irregular until you learn how to use the subjunctive tense, which we're not going to worry about today. So I'm just going to show you some key irregulars that you might want to use. So the same ones as before, poner becomes ponga, And that's because in the I form it's pongo, and then we're just changing that O for an A. Tener, which is tengo, I have. To say to someone, have patience. If you're speaking to someone you need to show respect to, you can say tenga paciencia. So again, you're just taking off the O from tengo and adding an A. Venir, another go verb, that one becomes vengo. So you can say to someone, venga, come on, venga aquí, come here. Ir becomes vaya. That one's quite different, vaya or vaya. So that's how you can say go. Váyase, go away, politely to someone that you respect, so you're probably unlikely to use that one. Decir, to say, becomes diga, and again in the I form that's digo, so we can just change that O for an A. Hacer, which is hago in the I form, you can say haga. Haga sus deberes, do your homework. Salir, which again is a go verb, salgo, can become salga. Salga de la casa, leave the house. And as I mentioned, you could say váyase, go away, váyase. Dígame, tell me. Dígame la verdad, tell me the truth. So whether you use vete or váyase, dime or dígame, it depends on whether you'd normally speak to that person with the tú form or the usted form. ¿Qué pasa con los verbos reflexivos en la forma de usted? So in the usted form, reflexive verbs, they're quite simple. You just need to add the se pronoun to the end of the imperative. So levantarse, if we forget about the se and just take levantar, we'd normally give that an E ending because it's all back to front. That would become levante. And then we add the se again. So levántese. Levántese, por favor. Get up, please. Sentarse is going to become siéntese. Siéntese, por favor. Take a seat, please. And vestirse would become vístase. So an A ending because it's an IR verb. So it's all kind of back to front compared to everything that we've learned about the normal present tense. Vístase. And then irse would become váyase, as we saw. So to take oneself away, to go away, váyase. Ahora practiquemos un poco con la forma de usted. Now let's practice a little bit with the usted form. So again, the same verbs that I'd like you to make into the imperatives, but this time in the usted form, remembering that it's all kind of back to front. So for the AR verbs, you'll add an E, and for the ER and IR verbs, you'll add an A. So when you're ready, pause the video, and then just push play to go through the answers. Okay, let's go through. So we've got number 1, escuchar, becomes escuche, terminar becomes termine, escribir becomes escriba, abrir becomes abra, like abracadabra, vivir becomes viva, comer becomes coma, y mirar becomes mire. Mire aquí. Take a look here. La próxima pregunta, the next question we're going to take a look at, ¿cómo se usa el imperativo con ustedes? How do we use the imperative with ustedes? Now, if you don't know, ustedes is the pronoun that we use for groups of people, so more than one person, in the formal form. So if we need to speak to someone, a group of people that are older than us, that we don't know, that we need to show respect to, or if you're speaking Spanish in Latin America, they don't actually use vosotros at all. So you'd only ever use ustedes with more than one person. So you'd need to know how to do this, how to use the imperative in the ustedes form. Now for this, we also use the subjunctive, but it's going to be quite easy because we only need to know how to use it in one scenario, just with one group of people. And it's just like the usted form, but with an N on the end. So it's actually quite simple to start using this. So for verbs ending in AR, you're just going to take off the AR and put N, EN. So hablar would become hablen. For verbs ending in ER and IR, you're going to add an. So correr, to run, would become corran. Decidir, to decide, would become decidan. So it's just like the usted form, but with an N on the end. Por último, last of all, ¿cómo se usa el imperativo con el nosotros? How do we use the imperative with the pronoun nosotros, the we pronoun? Now in English we say let's go, let's stay at home, let's do our work. It's quite easy. In Spanish, you also need to use the subjunctive, like for the usted form, and it's quite complicated, so we're just going to learn some examples for now. For example, vámonos. means let's go. Now this one's a bit of an exception because in the subjunctive it would be vayámonos, but it's just easier to say vámonos, and actually you've probably heard people just say vamos, which means we're going. So that's just become kind of the default way to say let's go, vamos or vámonos, just because it's a lot easier. Digamos la verdad. Let's tell the truth. Now you might notice that diga was the usted form. In the ustedes form it would be digan, and we're just using the amos ending, so digamos. So you might see that it's actually not quite that complicated, but I don't want us to get bogged down with the subjunctive tense at this stage. Hagamos eso. Let's do that. So again, hago goes to haga in the usted form, hagan in the ustedes, and in the nosotros form, hagamos. Escuchemos la radio. Let's listen to the radio. So again, it's an AR verb, but it takes the emos ending, so it's all back to front with the subjunctive, which is what we use for the usted, ustedes, and nosotros forms of the imperative. Practiquemos un poco más. So before we finish, we're just going to practice a little bit more. I would like you to translate these commands into English, and they're in all different forms, all of the different forms that we've looked at. If you can, also make a bit of a note, or at least a mental note, of which form the sentences are in, just to show that you've really understood which is which. So when you're ready, push play and we'll go through the answers. Escucha la radio, listen to the radio, and that's in the tú form. Number 2, número 2, terminad vuestros deberes. Finish your plural homework, finish your collective homework, and that's the vosotros form, speaking to a group of people informally. Escriba su nombre, write your name, and that's in the usted form, so we're speaking formally to someone. Abran la puerta, open the door, and that's in the ustedes form, so we're speaking to a group of people formally. Vivamos la vida, let's live life, that's in the nosotros form, the we form. And finally, escúchame, listen to me. Now, I didn't show you, I think I mentioned it, but I didn't show you explicitly how to put me on the end, so I thought I'd throw this in here to give you an idea of how you can do that. So it all becomes one word. Escucha, escúchame, listen to me. So it's quite easy to make the command a bit more specific as well. And that brings us to the end of this lesson. Muchísimas gracias por ver este video. Thank you so much for watching this video. Some next steps you might want to take are to make some notes about the imperative, so you can go back through and pause on those key screens where we talk about what it is, when it's used, how to form it in the different persons, and what the key irregulars are. And another step would be to start working towards memorizing the irregulars so that you can use them, recognize them, and understand them a bit more easily. Otra vez, muchísimas gracias por ver y espero que te vaya muy bien con el español.